Okay, so today we begin chapter 3, Adhyay 3, and the title of chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita is Karma Yoga. So in chapter 2, it was primarily the essence of the Gita, like whatever knowledge and wisdom Krishna shares with Arjun. Chapter 2 is like a very condensed form of all of that. And then in the upcoming chapters, that knowledge gets explained in more details through the questions of Arjun. And so in this chapter 3, it begins with another question that Arjun puts to Krishna. Arjun Uvach, Jyayasi chet karmana te mata buddhir janardana, tat kim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. So he asks Krishna that, hey Krishna, since you consider that wisdom or intellect is better than uh, an action which is taken primarily, we say sakam, which means full of desire for a certain outcome. So, since you say that knowledge or intellect is better than that action, then why do you insist that I fight? Why do you want me to go into this action? And this question sort of represents both that Arjun is a little bit confused in his mind, that he has somehow not understood in entirety what Krishna wanted him to understand. And he has, which most of the people, when they listen about, different karmas and that, that sakam karma or action which is done for the desire of some outcome is not good, so the first thing comes to is then that means we do not act, or what do we do? And so such sort of confusions get created, and that's happening with Arjun as well. And so he's prompted that question to Krishna, that if the truth is that we are Atma, and Atma is nashwar and it never ends, and we are born again, and if all of that is true, then why do you really want me to still fight? Like, what's the purpose of action? व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तद एकम वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयो hamapniyam. He says, he uses a word called vyamishrit. That means something that has several meanings. So Krishna in chapter 2 tries to explain to him through various different metaphors, various different ways. So he says that with all these, my mind has become so confused. And so please tell me in very clear ways, give me one reason, give me one idea that what is going to be a better thing for me to do. Then Shri Krishna says, Loke asmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanak Gyan yogen sankhyanam karma yogen yoginam. So Krishna again now opens up and tries to explain to Arjun. He says that, Arjun, I have already mentioned it to you that there are two kind of people who make an attempt to know themselves. He uses, there's a very beautiful word in Hindi called Atma Sakshatkar, that is meeting yourself, getting to know yourself, or studying yourself. He says there are two type of people who make an attempt to get to know themselves. Some tries to understand it through Jnana Yoga, and some try to understand it through Bhakti Yoga, which means the path of wisdom and the path of devotion. Na karmana mana arambha traish karmaya purusho ashnute na cha sanyasnat eva siddhim samadhigacchati. Then he says कि from the outcome of an action, you cannot detach yourself. That means every action has an outcome. So if you feel that either I choose the path of wisdom or I choose the path of devotion, and that will get me rid of this mohamaya or this cycle of birth and death and this sansar, then he says that doesn't happen. And you also cannot just get indulged in the service of wisdom or devotion and move beyond what is your rightful action that you're supposed to do. So he says a word vimukh, which means you face on the other side. Like your action is facing right to you and you turn your back towards your action. That means letting go of your action just because you feel like either wisdom is my path or devotion is my path. He said that will not rid you of the outcome of your actions. And neither you can achieve any kind of siddhi or any kind of, I don't know how to translate the word siddhi in English. And he says that you cannot achieve through sannyas, or that means abandoning your actions. Liberation? Yeah, so liberation is mostly mukti. Siddhi is more like achieving a certain status. I don't know. So he is now getting into the depth of the question that Arjun has asked. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatu tishtati akarmakrit कार्यते ही अवशः कर्म सर्वः प्रकृति जय गुणै. इसे इसके प्रत्येक व्यक्ति को प्रकृति से अर्जित गुणों के अनुसार विवश होकर कर्म करना पड़ता है. अतः कोई भी एक क्षण भर के लिए भी अपना कर्म किए बिना नहीं रह सकता. So here he says is that we are born in this body, so we are bound to the nature of these elements, because our body is formed out of all these elements of nature, and through the amalgamation of the nature element, it has a certain prakriti, or it has certain tendencies or some predispositions according to which it has to perform certain actions. That means, like, born in this body, we are predisposed to certain kind of actions that we have to take. Now, we cannot run away from those actions, or we cannot just shun our actions and say that no, I have got the wisdom, I know I am God, or I know my truth, so I do not need to do my everyday duty. It's like even a wise person need to eat, need to sleep, need clothes to protect themselves, need shelter. So as long as all of these needs are there, as long as all of this elemental nature is acting, we will have some actions that we would need to do. So we cannot sustain without the action. कर्म इंद्रियाणि संयमय यह आस्ते Manasa Smaran, Indriya Arthan Vimudha, Atma Mithyachar Sah Uchyate. Then he says, जो कर्म इंद्रियों को वश में तो करता है, किंतु जिसका मन इंद्रिय विषयों का चिंतन करता रहता है, वह निश्चित रूप से स्वयं को धोखा देता है और मिथ्याचारी कहलाता है. So now he explains it further that it's not just important using all the wisdom that we sort of studied in chapter 2, is that you try to control all of your senses and say that, okay, my senses do not govern me, but I govern my senses. But in your your heart, all your attention is all the time engaged on these elements of the five senses. Then such a person is definitely deceiving themselves. So he says that it's not even about controlling your senses, but still keeping all your attention and focus on them. So he's indicating towards something deeper here. Yah tu indriyani manasa niyamya arambhate Arjun karma indriya karma yogam asaktah sa vishishyate. Okay, I'll sort of pull it together after this shlok. And he says, दूसरी ओर यदि कोई निष्ठावान व्यक्ति अपने मन के द्वारा कर्म इंद्रियों को वश में करने का प्रयत्न करता है और बिना किसी आसक्ति के कर्म योग प्रारंभ करता है, तो वह अति उत्कृष्ट है. So far, Krishna is trying to explain to Arjun, because the question that Arjun said, that if you consider that buddhi or intellect is better than any action, then why do you want me to fight? So he's just trying to explain to him through different ways. So he started from saying that there are two ways in which people go into the self, what do we call that, atma sakshatkar, to explore the truth about self. One is the path of wisdom and the other one is the path of devotion. And it is quite possible that on any of these paths, people may feel like, okay, I am indulged in this, so action isn't important for me. Like for me, getting dedicated to this, to the prayer of my God, is more important in the path of devotion. So I do not need to, so I can use that as an excuse to not do what is my duty. And the reason he gives is that those actions and those duties are just a part, because we are made of all of these elements. So as a nature, there are certain actions we are supposed to be performing, supposed to be doing, and we just cannot shun them. And if we do that, if we try and shun those actions, then we are not going to get any peace or any solace or any freedom. Rather, we would be deceiving ourselves. And then he also says that either through wisdom or through devotion, through putting your sensory attentions into other things, if you try and control them, you would still be deceiving yourself. Because somewhere deep down, you're still operating from a desire. So it's like, if we say that even a desire to be free is a desire after all, because some sort of senses are still indicated in that, still associated with that. So he is basically putting an action towards an amalgamation of the right knowledge along with pursuing the right action. Like you need to do your action, you need to do what you're born to do in this world, but without getting indulged in it. So, what he spoke about wisdom and devotion is basically to take care of that tendency of getting indulged or attachment, but it doesn't eliminate the action in our lives. Yes, go ahead, Manmeet.
So, action, I think, theoretically, to a large extent, and maybe experientially, I'm getting a hang of it. I think primarily from the fact that we have this body which feels hunger, we will be eating, we will be excreting, we will be sleeping. So, if all that is going, if that action is going on, we can't let go of the other actions we are supposed to. The census part is really bothering me at the moment. Um, are we saying that we'll never be free of these senses? Because these are the main culprits of our unhappiness. We are so dependent on the satisfaction of these five senses that we are constantly going in the cycle of desire. So, as long as we are alive, will we be always oscillating and be a pendulum between these desires and these pleasures, which arise primarily from these five senses?
It doesn't say that it cannot happen, but it's just trying to bring our attention to the fact that when we speak about controlling our senses or not getting indulged or attached with our sensory perceptions, sometimes it feels like you have to control them by force or by the power of your will, right? And it and you will see around, there are quite a lot of people who would be very very strict with themselves, will say I will not do this because I don't want to get stuck in this attachment, right? They want to deliberately hold themselves away from all those sensory indulgences. Now, what in that shlok Krishna was saying was that although it may seem on surface that they have controlled their sensory indulgences, but somewhere deep, their mind is always on that. If your mind is constantly thinking, I have to keep away from it, I have to keep away from it, I'm not going in that direction, I'm not going, although you have controlled, although you're not doing what maybe your senses are screaming or pushing you to do, but despite that you're still attached to that. It's only that your attachment is manifesting in now a way to moving away from that indulgence, but still that is a constant effort. It is not, you have not been able to give it up entirely, because when you really come to a point where you are not indulged in those sensory perceptions, it doesn't matter to you. It becomes so easy. It's like, if there is some sannyasi or if somebody who's a celibate or a monk, right? And they see some beautiful woman in front of them, you see, and you feel sort of like, okay, lured or attraction towards that person. So there could be two things that happen. Either you'll be like losing your sense and going towards it, or you will forcefully try to move away from that. But in both the cases, your sense is still indulged. Yeah, please go ahead, share the story. That would be good.
I'm sure you have read it. It's very common. So there are these two monks going through the
Mm,
forest, and then there
yeah,
is a river, and
yeah,
there's a beautiful girl who arrives,
yes.
and she is scared of the river, and this monk holds her in her arms and drops her on the other side, and Later, the other monk says, "Oh my God, you're not supposed to touch a woman, and you just did that."
Yeah.
And the other monk says, "Which woman? Is your mind still there? I left her back long time back."
Yeah, exactly. That's so apt. I think that's the perfect example of this. That even if we have to make so much of effort to keep ourselves or our senses in control, that means we are still attached to the outcome. That means we are still indulged. We are still not free. So, a true freedom is when it stops to bother you, when you can just uh, do your action irrespective of whatever happens without getting indulged. So, you've captured that essence well in the story.
Komal, I have another question, if you allow me to.
Yeah, please. You don't need my permission.
No, it's coming more from the seat of a coach, I realize. It's not my personal question as such. When I say personal, means it's not that I have undergone. I think right from the moment of my consciousness, I have been trying to find myself.
Hmm.
How, why do some people are in search of themselves and why are some not? We've come across those people. Also, from the fact today I led a workshop and I worked with the senior on many occasions. She's extremely unhappy right now.
Hmm.
And I've been clearly seeing her struggle. It's pure and pure self indulgence. Absolutely no interest in others, no appreciation in others, no sense of compassion. And she's extremely unhappy and she's unable to see that.
Hmm.
So, what makes people take on these different paths? Some are just walking and walking without questioning, and some are constantly questioning and trying to find, is this a God given gift? Is it something you're born with? What is it? Even to the extent, Komal, there are people who are not even in a coachable state. You have to first bring them into a coachable state and then they begin coaching. And there are people who are hungry, dying to be coached.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I can only share the response depending upon what I understand or what I believe. I think there could be two ways to answer this question. One, of course, we can take the path of karma and say that probably it is our prarabdha, you know, probably we are endowed with that kind of a karma that we are born with, that we are supposed to get into the quest to know ourselves, to find ourselves, and to know the deeper meaning of life and world and actions and everything. Even that happens with prarabdha. And I think another and more reason which is more associated with the developmental aspect is like the conditions in which we are all born and brought up in our primitive years, like from the time we are sort of in mother's womb till we are 7 years of age, is considered to be the primitive years of our life, formative years of our life. Like our experiences are in those years sort of govern the rest of our life and how our journey will ensue. And I recently got a deeper understanding when I was reading a book by Stephen Kessler. It's about the five personality patterns. And I saw that in different age groups, and I think that somewhere also is associated with the Sigmund Freud's five stages of psychosexual development of children. That how a fetus or a little young born baby at what age they sort of experience some specific um, you know experiences of lack of or unattention or some developmental lack, basically, that predisposes them in certain way to have certain kind of experience. For example, if a child is born in a stressful situation, like where their mother is very stressful, or right at the time of birth something happens and which is not a very positive experience for the newborn baby, then they develop certain tendencies in them which make them predisposed to not embody themselves sufficiently in this body, in this world. And that brought along with it certain kind of quests, certain kind of challenges, and certain kind of issues. On the other hand, if a child is, you know, has some specific bad experiences when they had already been 3, 4 years old, when their language is developed, when they have had some sense of self already developed in them, and then something happens, like maybe they are disciplined really badly, or they are corrected, or their parents put them through a very regimented kind of life, like, no, this is the only way, or this is the only right action to do some things. Then what happens is, then they grow up to be very indoctrinated kind of personalities. Like they have a very strong sense of self, but they have some very rigid patterns in them. And so they are more indulged in the life and its pleasures. Whereas some children who have either got some sort of trauma or bad experience before their language could develop, before their own sense of self could develop, their quest would be a little more deeper. So I think these developmental stages also play some sort of a role in what is going to come in our life, what would be our prime questions in our life, what would be we be looking out for. At the end of the day, everybody is striving to find themselves, but our paths are different. So the people who we see who are more indulged in, elements, or who are more indulged in stuff, name, or certain kind of image, or their own body, they are ultimately, they are also trying to find the truth about themselves, but they are trying to explore it through all of these physical manifestations of stuff. So answer that everybody is seeking is the same. It's just that our questions are different. So that is also another way of trying to understand like why people are different, and because their experiences are different. I don't know if this answers a bit of your question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ponder over it.
Yeah,
It's also making me realize how difficult it is for me when they are not asking the same questions, right?
that happens.
Yeah. And
That
also, wanting to see someone as coachable when they're not ready, it can be frustrating, and I'm being aware of that. So
hmm.
making someone coachable is also part of the whole process.
It's interesting because we discussed this question. Like I am training with Kocharya also, and so in Kocharya we several time come across this question, is like, is everybody coachable? And so we would say that yes, everybody is coachable, but everybody may not be coachable by you, you know and like you said, like somebody who is not seeking the same question, or who's not asking the same question which you have experience dealing with, it would feel very different. But maybe they would work very well with those people who've had similar questions in their mind. So they can be coached by those people who have dealt in the same questions. So everybody find their tribe, like we say. So let's come to what Krishna says to Arjun. नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीर यात्रापि च ते न प्रसिद्धेय कर्मणः. Do your duty. कर्म की उपेक्षा नहीं करो. Like, do not shun your duty, because even your body cannot survive without the action. यज्ञ अर्थात कर्मणः अन्यत्र लोकः अयं कर्म बंधनः तत् अर्थम कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्त संग समाचार. So in this one, Shri Krishna brings the idea of yagya. In in Vedic literature, in Vedas, yagya, or what do we call, or Havan that we do, is considered to be one of very pious, very precious action to do. And even in our Hindu families, like whenever we initiate something new, or when we enter into a new house, when a baby is born, or any specific stage of life, we do these yagyas or havans, because they are considered to be the pure actions to take. And these yagyas are not just uh, to pray the god, but they are basically actions taken for the well-being of everybody, for the well-being of community and society. So he says that the right action need to be undertaken as if you're doing a yagya or a home. Otherwise, your action would always generate a lot of bonding with this physical world, the material world. So, so that's where he gives him another idea to Arjun, and he says that Arjun, for the well-being of all, or for the happiness of the divine, do your action. And that's how you would always stay liberated from the outcome. So I really like this example, because I've heard this quite often as well. Whenever we've done any yagya, all the time, the panditji who comes and who sort of do all of these uh, mantra part and mantrocharan, he always says that, you're doing this and it's going to benefit not just you, but your entire family, all the people who are participating in it, and even the environment. Because it's considered that yajna is also an action which purifies the air around you, it purifies the all the elements, the water and the food at home. And so that's one action that purifies everything. Similarly, Krishna says that consider your actions like you're doing a yajna, which means it's not just going to benefit you, it's going to benefit every people, and it's going to benefit the entire environment around you. And that's how you will not be attached to it. सह यज्ञः प्रजः सृष्टवा पुरा उवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रस्विष्टमः एषः व अस्तु इष्टकामधुक्. सृष्टि के प्रारंभ में समस्त प्राणियों के स्वामी ने विष्णु के लिए यज्ञ सहित मनुष्यों तथा देवताओं की संततियों को रचा और उनसे कहा, तुम इस यज्ञ से सुखी रहो, क्योंकि इसके करने से तुम्हें सुखपूर्वक रहने तथा मुक्ति प्राप्त करने के लिए समस्त वांछित वस्तुएं प्राप्त हो सकेंगी. So he takes us to the history of a little bit of like how in the beginning when the universe was getting created, uh, then Vishnu did that yagya and for the happiness and well-being of all the gods, goddesses, and the humans. Devan bhavyatah anen te devah bhavayantu vah परस्परम भावयन्तः श्रेयः परम अवापस्थ। यज्ञों के द्वारा प्रसन्न होकर देवता तुम्हें भी प्रसन्न करेंगे और इस तरह मनुष्यों तथा देवताओं के मध्य सहयोग से सबों को संपन्नता प्राप्त होगी। While I'm reading this, I'm thinking of this yajna as a metaphor. That this universe began with these actions which were taken not for any specific purpose, like it just happened. And if we look in the depth, sometimes it also feels like what is the purpose of this entire universe? And we'll say, why is there this earth? Why are there stars? And why all of this is there? And I don't think anybody can really answer that question, like, what is the purpose of all of this? Like, okay, it is all there. It all just happened. It all just got created. Nobody knows why, but it's a beautiful creation. It's a mystery. It's a very, very engaging existence which intrigues us human, which also inspires us and challenges us in so many ways. And but we don't really know if there is any purpose to it or not. It's only as human who feel that sense or that need of giving it a meaning, and it can hold any meaning that we choose to give to it. But if we look in entirety, nobody knows if that initial yagya or that initial unattached action of the creation of this universe was ever done to with a certain outcome in the mind or with a certain thing like, okay, this is what is going to happen because of it. So I think there is something deeper in this metaphor about our sense of doing that action, that when we just take our do our action in the most detached form, it does bring a lot of happiness. Yeah, please, Manmeet.
I'm also thinking that had those actions not happened, the so-called yagya, which led to the creation of universe, the universe wouldn't have been created. So a karam happened at that time also, a yagya happened that time also, and nobody knew what's going to happen. So now that the universe is there, I'm saying business of universe has to be done. So who's going to do it? We all have been assigned roles and duties for it. So the universe has assigned us work and we got to do it,
Yeah,
irrespective of the outcome, since we don't know. We are too mortal beings to know what's going to happen, but it's our roles and universe has no other way of running. So एक तरह से हम कर्मचारी हैं और हमें वो काम करने हैं, हमें बोला गया है और हमें करने हैं. And it's easier to bow your head as a karamchari to the universe rather than a sarkari office. That's the only difference.
yeah. And for most of us, it's very counterintuitive, but I absolutely love a question which says that instead of like when we say, okay, what do I want to do in my life? But if we just turn around that question and say, what does life want of me? It's it just shifts and changes the perspective so much. In one, it's like my want, my desire, which means my responsibility, I would go straight into my. Oh, wow. Yeah, Viktor Frankl. Okay, so Viktor Frankl has this question in his book. Great.
Yeah, in man's search
Search for meaning.
purpose.
Oh, okay.
So in the concentration camp, he after he comes out, he has written this that, why are we always thinking that what I want? Why don't we ever turn around and ask what life is demanding out of us? Right now, it's demanding out of us that you have to stay put, walk through this shit, go back to your family, and
Yeah.
carry on with your life.
Yeah. And that is so liberating and empowering way of asking ourselves questions, because if in that situation, if all a person could think, like if we take Viktor Frankl's situation in a concentration camp, you would want, what would you want? I want to go out of here. I want a safe space. I want better food. I want better conditions. So, and those create a sense of lack and sense of distress and sense of depression or anxiety in a person. Whereas him asking this question, what is this situation demanding of me, it is so liberating, because in a way, while you have sort of surrendered your need to control the situation, you're also empowering yourself, you're also getting all the energy, and you're also sort of understanding that whatever the situation may be, you have a capability to adapt according to that situation. And then the next shlok, which Krishna is saying, I just want to read it alongside. He says, Ishtan bhogan hi vah devah dasyante yagya bhavitah तय दत्तान अप्रदाय एभ्य य भुक्ते तेन एव स. So he says कि everything that you need for your life, and he again stays on this examples of yagya, like when you do the yagyas, the devas or the gods become happy and then they bestow you with the gifts and everything that you need for your life, and all the gifts, all the good gifts sort of come to you. And in the old times, people used to do these yagyas or havans for rain to happen, for good, um good fortune and all of those things. So he says that when you do your action like you are doing a yagya, you are bestowed with everything that you need in your life, which means you do not need to worry for whether I will have food to eat or whether I'll have this thing or that thing. He says, when you bring yourself to the nishkam karma, or an action where your action is devoted to the benefit of not just you but the entire humanity, entire divinity, you are bestowed with everything that you need, that is really necessary to sustain your life. So you do not even need to worry for where the food will come from. Whereas if we are always sort of indulged in that thought, like, okay, it feels like it is my responsibility to bring food on plate, it is my responsibility to bring this, you know so all that is just centered around mind, and you don't, or you feel disconnected from that larger, universe, or those larger forces and powers, and we
Uh,
see it.
Komal, someone very recently defined depression as too much focus on self.
Yeah.
I loved it. That when you are constantly thinking that it's me who has to do, it's me who's done it, blaming, shaming, or even holding yourself responsible and not looking at the larger as being a part of the larger universe, it's causing you anxiety and your mental health is getting impacted.
Yeah. I also read somewhere that depression is the anger turned inward. So, aggression is anger projected outside, and depression is the anger turned inward inside you. Like you are within yourself and just cursing yourself and hitting yourself, like, I can't do this and I'm not capable and da 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 da. Da. And not realizing in the moment that you're not alone. You are a part of this entire universe. That means you are connected at all the times. You just need to open up your eyes, open up your senses, and just see that connection. Just find it and do your action in the right manner. And then you do not need to worry for how your life will be sustained because it will. And I can tell you, Manmeet, um, this is like my lived experience. Uh, when I came here, when I came to Canada, so I'd left my career of 14, 15 years. I just started into coaching and new country, absolutely. Then pandemic happened. I didn't know anybody. Whatever job sort of I would apply for, I never ever got any one interview call. And I was also a little bit lost because such a huge change has happened in my life. I'm in a completely new land. I had no network, no connection at all. So it felt very difficult. And I would say I experienced very viscerally that feeling of being disassociated with everything around me. And so I decided that no, I'll just pursue coaching. I'll set up my own work and I'll find, I had no clue where I will find work from, what will happen. But I just, again, going back to that question of Viktor Frankl, so what can I do in the moment? Like right now, yes, there's pandemic. I cannot go out and meet people, can't develop my network. What are my best possible opportunities? What can I still do staying at home? I started with doing the volunteer work, but it's not paying me any money. Nevertheless, right now, what is your need? Just do your work. Just do this, and we will see. And sometimes it's doing an effort from one day to another day and not knowing what will happen after 1 week, but still be okay with it. I would not say that I have a faith or a belief. No, I will not even go to those places because what I did was just focused on right here, right now. Right here, right now. Do I have food? Do I have clothes? Do I have a shelter? What am I doing with my time? What can I do better? Just keep focusing on that, and slowly and gradually things happen. And then I'll tell you, when I started to coach, and then there was all of these things happen, like somebody is promoting them through TikTok, somebody is doing Instagram, somebody is developing content and all of those things, somebody is publishing book. All of these ideas come like, okay, these are all marketing practices you can do. And I was like, strategize, plan, and do. And I was like, no. I looked at all of those things. They felt very inauthentic to me personally. I'm not saying that they are very inauthentic, but to me, who I am, that felt very inauthentic. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I am not going to do this. So I was like, okay, so what would I do? And then I thought, well, you do what you've done so far. That is, stay in the present moment, take a stock, just see which doors are opening, which doors are inviting you, what is calling you, and go in that direction. And I just did that. I just went in the direction that was calling out to me. I spoke to those people who spoke to me or who I felt are open to talk to me. And there I was absolutely vulnerable, very open. There I tried to see, okay, what value can I create for them? What value they are creating for me? And just by that, everything happened. Just by that, the work happened. I had no strategy, so to say. The only strategy was to stay present, stay open, stay connected, look around. And I think now I'm in, after the pandemic thing was over, now is the second year, and I'm pretty content, pretty happy doing what I'm doing, have some connections. And even today, my only strategy is this: stay present, pick up the book that is calling you, read it, go in the direction which is calling you, and do that. And I think I am nobody to authenticate what Gita is saying, but I can say that this is my lived experience. When I stopped to try to control my action too much with my own mind and limited knowledge, all of that happened. My responsibilities are taken care of. And I know, Manmeet, you are in the same path, so you can definitely relate. And so reading it in Bhagavad Gita now feels like, yes, that is the right thing to do. And it may seem very difficult, but that is when we are just too enmeshed in our own minds and trying to think that our intelligence or our brain power is the supreme and there is not as much beyond it. I think it's the other way around, that we got to surrender our own brains and minds to what is larger and what is out there and go in that direction. I
I
think
would,
that should be
I would
sufficient for
come,
today.
yeah. And Komal, it's simple mathematics. We are one brain, one mind. How far can we go? And if you take the entire universe with you, imagine the limitlessness. It's a very simple mathematics.
Absolutely.
And this whole business of showing up, which again, not negating what others do, each to its own. But I think sometimes showing up is not the way the world has made it to be. Showing up is, when you're sitting across a person and you brought that smile or that spark in their eyes, showing up has happened. And that's what happens. That grassroots level work speaks for itself and it makes things go around.
Absolutely. And I think once we get to do it, we know that it's actually not that difficult. And
It's very liberating.
it's very liberating, yes. It's very weightless, it's flowing, and it is what psychologists and scientists are trying to research about. It's just
I just
understanding.
wrote my own, I redefined my goal when I was extremely feeling this pressure of being, I would say, performative action, which is not visible. I'm not seeing the results. So I'm thinking I'm underperforming or I'm not performing at all or I'm not good enough to perform. Right? So those are the thoughts that bind you. So in fact, last week only in my journal, I redefined my purpose. I want to be better than who I was yesterday. That's going to be my only goal.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And this conversation is reminding me the story of Hatim Tai and a phrase there, Neki kar darya mein dal. It's like do the good deeds and just let them go.
Yeah.
It sort of summarizes what Krishna is speaking about. Karma Yoga or the right action through the metaphor of Yagya. I think it's a very, very powerful metaphor. It sits so well with me. So, with that, I think we conclude our today's session and we meet next week.
Yes, this is wonderful. और I was just suddenly reminded when you said नेकी कर दरिया में डाल, क्योंकि पानी तो वही पीना है ना सबने, हमने भी वहीं से पीना है, कोई अलग पानी तो है नहीं. इनफैक्ट दे आर सेइंग हम तो डायनासोर के जमाने वाला पानी पी रहे हैं, वही रिसाइकल हो रहा है. तो ये हमारा भ्रम है कि ये मेरा पानी या तेरा पानी, या मेरा पानी ज्यादा अच्छा तेरा कम अच्छा, या मुझे ज्यादा मिल गया पानी तुझे कम मिला है. It's just a myth.
Yeah, so true. Oh my
All
God.
right.
I was tired after today, but after this conversation, I'm so rejuvenated again. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. See you next week, Komal.
Okay,
Bye
bye.
bye.